Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's fantasy baseball strategy show, every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. I'm Dr. Dan Ratner, and I'm here, as always, with Casey, Vlad to the Bone Scheinfold, and
Home
Ross
run
the Boss.
Derby champion, Vlad.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ross Boss. Dan, welcome back. Welcome to the party, pal. You haven't been here in weeks. I know you've been working on that best-selling book that everybody's excited about. I can't wait to read it. It's going to be unbelievable. I have 2 chapters about just Ross the Boss in it. It's going to be fantastic.
2 chapters about Ross the Boss, for sure.
I mean, there's been a lot of baseball you missed that we'll catch you up on the show today, which I'm excited to talk about. Let's jump right into it, guys, right?
Yeah, well, okay, so you said that I missed a lot. So let's talk about headlines. What are the big things that have happened? Obviously, we're just coming back from the All-Star break, but what are the big things that have happened? What did I miss?
My favorite story of the week, just because we have Casey on, and I love this. The New York Yankees decided to sell their sleeve to an insurance company. So when they're playing, Star Insurance, that's the name of the company, is going to pay $20 million a year to have that little logo on the sleeve of the Yankees because Hal Steinbrenner, the dumb brother of them all, decided that the $20 a beer wasn't good enough, that they had to sell their soul
as we
to
know,
an insurance company, Casey Scheinfold.
As everybody knows, the Yankees are a small market team trying to compete with some of these
small
bigger
market
clubs.
team.
And so
I just hope it's part of
income.
the Ohtani fund, because right now all the rumor now is the Yankees want to get Ohtani, so maybe this is why they're just selling their soul and selling their jerseys.
I said on Tuesday who I think Ohtani's going to. I'd love it to be Cincinnati, but I think Tampa Bay is going to pony up for a rental.
Okay, but also, is it really news that the Yankees are going to go after Ohtani? They're always doing this.
I don't think the Yankees are going to go after Ohtani.
They will.
You know what, Casey? This is what the Yankees should do.
Here's my prediction for the Yankees.
Go ahead.
They're going to get Shane Bieber. Sorry, Dan.
Ooh,
that's happening
his
for
career's
sure.
down like this.
And
that's
Juan
happening for sure.
Soto.
Soto with that
it would not surprise me at all. I mean, that's
even if it's just a rental. Put that left-handed bat in the middle of the Yankees lineup, and all of a sudden they're playoff favorites again.
I mean, the Yankees should just accept the tag of the evil empire and just accept it and just go after every big name.
I was going to say, I think they have accepted it. I think they
were trying to fight it a little bit, but
they did for a while. They did.
They did. But I think they should accept it and just be that evil empire we all know and love, and that's it. Go after Soto, go after Ohtani, go after every big name possible.
Well, now hold on. We know them. I'm not sure we love them. I
was thinking about this, Casey. What do you think about this one? Salvador Perez, the catcher for Kansas City, that's going nowhere to the Yankees.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I think the White Sox are going to trade everybody, right? So I could see somebody like Joe Kelly, although he famously hates the Red Sox, but that would be your bullpen arm you're going to go get, or Bednar, because we're talking about the Pirates relief or bullpen as our cover boy. But that's Yeri De Los Santos, because that would be the next guy to step up. But Bednar, I think Soto is the big swing if they're going to go for somebody. Bellinger is kind of the safer left-handed bat they would get behind.
I think Bellinger is for sure on the trade block,
and then I think it's Shane Bieber. I can't.
I mean, his strikeouts are down, his velocity's down. He's not the same guy.
Well, if he was the same guy, they wouldn't be able to get him.
Exactly. And St. Louis announced today that everybody's available.
Maybe they'll get Jordan Montgomery back.
Wait, Ross, what was that you said?
The Cardinals are going to. The Cardinals said they'll trade Goldschmidt. They said anybody's available on their roster to be traded, but they said they're not putting the white flag up quite yet. But everybody's available to trade.
I think everybody would swing for Jordan Walker. I don't think they're going to give.
Except a 20-year-old that makes league minimum. I don't think is going anywhere. Yes.
I like that they say we're not waving the white flag, but everyone's available.
Right. That's what I laughed about. That's what I was like, what?
That's ridiculous. Okay, so what other headlines are we looking at? And let's think, especially from a fantasy perspective, because people are going to have to make adjustments. We know the trade deadline is coming up. When is the trade deadline? It's usually
July 31st, right, Case?
July 31st.
Yeah, it's usually the end of July.
Yeah, that's when it usually is. So we've got that coming up. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But what are the big headlines other than what you've said so far? The Yankees and Dodgers will sign 75% of all of those players we just mentioned. I'm kidding. Go ahead, Casey.
No, I don't know if there's any big headlines over the break other than just like the disappointments based on first half performance, how bad the Padres have been, how bad the Mets have been, how much the Yankees have struggled without Aaron Judge, that despite their payrolls, all three of them, they're so fragile in their performance. And then you look how hot the Reds were coming into the All-Star break, Tampa Bay's start to the season, Texas's continued ability to stay with Houston. I think those are the big headlines. And now it's looking to the second half to say, who are you thinking overperformed and is going to regress in that direction? And who are you thinking are the sleepers or breakout candidates going into the second half?
I think that's well said, but I'll add to this, just building on what you said. One thing to do as a fantasy sports player, a fantasy baseball player, is look at the actual standings, because you've got to figure out which of these teams are going to sell players and which are going to buy. If you don't even know where people are and where teams are in the standings, you're going to get lost in that. I mean, just today we were talking about, well, who should the cover boy be? And I wanted somebody who was a backup closer who is probably going to ascend into that position when the closer gets dealt. If you're looking at a team and saying, oh, well, I love this guy and he's second, but they're, 20 games over 500, that's not happening.
It's funny. I was looking at closers, and I only have one guy as a top tier closer. One guy. That's it. I have no. Your guy for Cleveland is not. He may lose his job to Eli Morgan. I mean,
it would not be surprising at all.
I mean, Eli Morgan. I wanted to talk about him today just because if he's not picked up in your league, you should pick him up because Clace is that how you say his name? Clase. He's very close to losing his job. His velocity is way down. He's not saving the games like he did last year. And I really think Eli Morgan's going to get that job for the second half. So if you want to get a closer right now, don't tell the guys in my league about it, but Eli Morgan is the pickup.
Okay. You just told two of them, but that's okay.
We weren't listening.
We've been doing it all year. I mean, also, it is kind of a story, I would say, when you look at these standings. I mean, the AL Central, I'm sure it's not a surprise.
True or false, guys, AL Central at the end of the year, they will not have a winning record team. Yes or no?
That's going to be false, but it's going to be close.
Case?
I'll say false. I think the NL Central could be argued the same way.
Well, at least we're over 500 and
now. But close. Honestly, Ross, do you believe that the Reds are going to play above 500 baseball in the second half?
Yes.
I think that they easily
would you be
could, but I think
if they didn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't, but the Brewers will.
I think the Brewers have no hitting. The Reds are motivated. They're youth oriented.
Oh, I'm not saying they're not, but I'm just saying, would you be surprised with a team that's never? When's the last time the Reds have had a winning record? Would you?
It's been. I think I was 2 years old.
Would you be surprised when it's a bunch of rookies leading the way? That as the pressure of August and September and October kind of,
my guess is
them, that fatigue and the pressure get to them.
See, I think it's going to be the opposite. I think they have no pressure on them. Nobody's expecting anything. So
yep.
I think
I agree. And
really
Casey, their number at the beginning of the year in Vegas to win the winning total was 64. Now it's up to 84. It jumped 20 points since the second half, which is the biggest jump of any team.
I'm not sitting here saying I don't love watching the Reds play, and from a fantasy perspective, they're a gold mine. We've been talking about.
I'll leave it up to this: if the Reds GM gets on the horn and brings in another starter, let's say, maybe some help in the bullpen, I think they have a legitimate shot to win that division. If they don't do anything, I think you're right. I think they'll phase away, and I don't think they'll win the division.
Yeah, because you're going to run like Andrew Abbott has been arguably their best pitcher since he was called up.
100%. I'm not arguing.
Is he gonna? But once he gets to 100 innings, 120 innings, and all of a sudden the shut him down talk starts, because that's the way they handle rookies.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Ben Lively's back. Lavallo's coming back. We got some starters on the way, and I'm hoping Lucas Giolito. Is that how you say his name?
Giolito.
Giolito. We've interviewed him.
Giolito. I hope Giolito is traded to the Reds. I just hope that happens soon.
Yeah. All right, let me ask you this before we get into fantasy surprises and then second half expectations. Who's the most surprising team to you in baseball, good or bad? Which team has surprised you the most?
Let's do American League and National League.
We'll do American League. Fair enough. American League.
Casey, why don't you go first? I always.
Are we doing American League?
Yeah, we'll start AL.
Surprised me the most, I would say, is the Baltimore Orioles. I love them. I mean, I do love watching them, but nobody picked them in the top 4. Maybe I think probably preseason, if you look, they were battling with Boston for the 4th spot in predictions for the AL East. Now they're in second, and arguably are playing better than the Rays right now because the Rays have regressed a little bit. So they're my surprise for good performance. Bad, the Yankees would have to be up there. I mean, considering what they put
the
together.
Evil Empire, they're 7 games over 500.
Right.
And this is the bad nomination.
Right. So that would be my 2 in the American League. I think the National League has had more surprising numbers than the American League.
All right, let's get to that in a second. Ross, do you want to go next or me?
I'll just say the Angels. I'm not going to go through a long tirade why. Angels, and I think the biggest disappointment I would probably have to say is probably, I would probably say Seattle.
Yeah, that could be a good thing for a show. Is just to have somebody on whose answers are always very, very short.
Well, if you want to hear the whole reason why, you don't really need to. But just for me, I thought Seattle was going to be a top tier team.
No, I agree, and I find it refreshing that there's just an answer. Like for me, the answer is the Texas Rangers. They're the most surprising to me.
Really,
just from where I was at the beginning of the season.
They signed DeGrom, who's been out for the whole year. And
yeah, but I mean, when they signed him, I was like, he's going to last a month.
He'll throw 6 innings. Yeah, that was kind of.
I know, but I mean, I thought they were trying to. I just had a feeling that they were trying to contend against Houston.
I don't know if you had told me that Texas would be in first place at the All-Star break, even if it was Houston's only 2 games out, I would have been very surprised.
Yeah.
I'm looking at other surprises. I think. It's not that surprising, but look at the AL East. The last team in the AL East is 5 games over 500.
Yep.
It's just insane. And actually, I would say Boston is a bit of a surprise because their roster didn't look that good going in. They've played pretty well. Let's move to the NL. Ross, we'll start with you this time.
Well, I'm going to take my Cincinnati Reds.
Of course you are.
Everybody predicted the Reds to be in the cellar. They're in first place. I mean, that's an easy one. I mean, there's no comparison.
Actually, there is one other.
I would also say second, just because I love this team, is the Marlins.
He's going to take that team. Oh no,
I love their pitching staff, and their starters are awesome. And if they make
now you're
playoffs,
not just giving one-word answers.
And but National League, I'm not going to because I love the National League. But let me tell you something: the Marlins, if they make it to the playoffs and they have that starting rotation, they're dangerous. I mean, if I was Atlanta, I would not want to face the Marlins in the first round. I would not.
I agree. The one other team that I'll just bring up in this discussion is Arizona.
Yeah, that's who I was going to say. Yeah,
Arizona is going to be 8-9 games back by September.
That's interesting.
But we're just talking about the first half.
Okay, that's fine.
But right now, they're not even a game back.
Nope.
They're tied. So those are the 3 that I think are the most surprising. But I got to go with the Reds if I have to pick one. I mean,
yeah. And then on the disappointing side, I already said it, the Mets and the Padres.
St. Louis.
And the Padres easily. There's no other disappointment teams.
But it's got to be the Padres.
With the Padres and Mets, with what the kind of the bobblehead nights they tried to build just by signing all these stars.
Why don't you give us an example? What happened to one of the bobblehead nights?
And so it's like,
are you talking about Luis Severino? I think you are.
Yes.
Yeah. Cohen bought everybody he could in New York, and they've gone nowhere. And I mean, there was enough stars in San Diego already, but let's go get Xander Bogaerts, and they've been just as bad, if not worse.
All right, let's move to, and remember, we're going to talk from a fantasy perspective mostly, but you can talk about baseball. Who do you think, just regular baseball, who do you think are the second half stars that people aren't going to see coming? The second half sleepers that you want people to watch out for? Let's start with hitters. It can be any position that you want, but who do you see as somebody, and by the way, we don't have to just stick with 60% and under rostership.
No, we'll do the whole range. So if you want to trade for these guys,
exactly, because
you can, because their market's down right now. I'll give a couple, I guess. First one is,
for some reason,
the namesake we have here is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I mean, his stats are not that great in the first half. They're not, but I think he's going to have a huge second half. I think Toronto's going to make a run for the playoffs. And I think Guerrero Jr. won the home run hitting contest. We talked about the KC on Tuesday. And another one that's having a horrid first half, but I think he'll pick it up too, is Bryce Harper. He's just too good. Guys, he's just too good to have those stats that he's doing. And another name that's like, I like, that Casey likes too, is where is he? Bryce Harper. Luke Rayleigh of the Tampa Bay Rays.
One of the few good moves I've made.
I think Luke's already has some pretty good stats, 15 home runs, but I think he's going to have a really good second half also. So those are the three guys I'm kind of like looking at right now that you could probably get now because their stats aren't that great, but you could trade for them for somebody that had a good first half.
I mean, I do think it's important to keep in mind. There's going to be plenty of fantasy baseball players who really haven't been paying that much attention. So let's take Trey Turner, for example. Is this somebody you want to deal for right now? To me, he is.
No, and I'm not, and I'm going to say not because I don't think there's the potential for him to be great in the second half. Obviously, he's a great baseball player. But the guy who drafted him, if it's a redraft league, drafted him first, second, or third overall, and is going to want enough in capital back.
Right.
And then the other side of that is the kind of more naive owner who doesn't pay that close attention is just going to go on name, and Trey Turner's the biggest name, and so you're paying for his name.
Okay, but just playing devil's advocate, let's say you're sitting on Randy Arozarena and you want a deal for Trey Turner. Is that a good deal? Now, you're risking something because Arozarena has been a much better player, but he's slowed down. And so I think it depends on your position.
It depends on your roster, but yeah, I mean, if you want to take that chance on Trey Turner having a great second half, it's not a bad bet.
No, I think it's not a bad bet. If you, and I guess the answer is like it is in everything in psychology, right? Dan and I are psychologists here. It depends.
I am.
I play one on TV, but yeah.
Yeah, well, you're honorary. It depends on what the price is. If the guy doesn't want too much, like that's when you're talking who are your sell high candidates, obviously, too. But I think, if we're looking at some players I would be targeting, I think Riley Green in Detroit is somebody who a couple years ago had a lot of prospects shine on him and people wanted him a lot. He got forgotten because he didn't do so well, and he's in Detroit. But if you look at his numbers, he's doing well. He doesn't, and he's been healthy this year. So he's somebody you could probably get inexpensive, who's going to give you power and speed because people don't pay attention to him. Like those are the guys I'm looking at. Despite his numbers, and I can look them up here for you. Hold on one second. So I have them exact. Riley Green on the season, 305, 31 runs scored, 6 home runs and stolen bases. It's been even better, I think, the last 30 days.
While you're looking at that case, one thing just to add to it is, you would be surprised at how many people will look at those numbers and not factor in the fact that he was out for 5 weeks or something like that. They're not going to factor it in. They're going to see 6 homers. It happens all the time. You've got to be able to catch your fellow managers napping on these things. Look into the numbers and see the pace of things. That's the key.
So yeah, exactly. And I like Riley Green. Spencer Torkelson's another one in Detroit.
Arizona State.
Favorite Arizona State.
One of my favorites.
Wildcat.
No, Sun Devil, but keep going.
He did that.
You know who else is not getting any press? He's not. His average is horrible, but he's going to hit some home runs. Is Pete Alonso for the Mets? I mean,
he's going to hit 50 bombs. He hit 26 in the first half. So
here's a quick question: true or false? Will Ohtani hit 60 home runs?
I think it's true.
I think he's going to miss it just barely. I call false. 58.
One more true or false. Will Ronald Acuna Jr., right? 70 stolen bases.
I think if he stays healthy, 40 home runs, 70 steals. I think it's going to be that
I think he'll fall short
epic of a.
I think he is going to break
80 steals. I actually think 70 is conservative. I think he
could push 40 already. Yeah.
Right. So I'm going to say
I just think
40,
he's going to
70 if he stays healthy.
I'm going to say that he slows down on purpose because the playoffs are coming up.
There you go.
I still think he's going to break 65 steals. I predict crazy. 68 steals.
The last person to break 70, I don't know if you guys know this. I doubt you'll get it, but I know it just because I just read it. 1992, Marquise Grissom.
Marquise Grissom stole that many bases?
Oh, yeah, he was a speed merchant.
72 stolen bases in 92, I believe. And before that, it was Ricky Henderson in 88 with like 90.
Ricky Henderson was awesome. And then Eric Davis did it too, didn't he?
He did 30-30 or 40-40, whatever he did.
He did 40. He was the first 40-40, or was Canseco the first 40-40? I think Eric Davis was.
Can't remember. Doesn't matter.
Who remembers? Who remembers?
As long as it's a red. Yeah.
as long as it's a red.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about pitchers. Second half pitchers.
Okay. I think I would be looking at let's see, pitchers wise. I think Grayson Rodriguez, prospect who's not up yet. I think he's going to come up, or he should be getting up, back up again.
Not back up, yes.
Right, back up. I think he could be huge. I think Jordan Hicks, if you're looking at a relief pitcher, is the relief pitcher to target at this point.
He might be traded, Case, but that's a good one.
But I think if he's traded, I don't. But
I'm not disagreeing.
Like
I think
if the Yankees got him, do you think he's not going to close? Clay Holmes has been terrible. So, but most teams, the Dodgers, are you going to?
Oh, your sound is breaking up.
That's a good one. Another one. Dodgers love stealing stuff from St. Louis.
I like Reed Detmers a lot. If you remember how the way he started last season, and when he came back recently, he's been pitching great. Those are the pitchers I'd be looking at. I think Andrew Abbott and Gavin Williams of the rookies are going to be good. So,
I mean, right now, I think the Cy Young is Spencer Strider. He's leading the league in strikeouts, plus he's on Ross the Boss's team. So those are 2 pluses. I think Strider's going to win 23, 24 games. He's going to be that good, Dr. Dan Ratner. And he's young, too. And he's young. But some of the guys I would focus on who are kind of out there, maybe even on a waiver wire, that you may want to pick out. I like Christopher Sanchez of the Phillies. His ERA right now is like 2.84. He's pitching really good. I also like Tariq Skirball of the Detroit. His ERA is Casey's GPA in college, 0.0, with 8 innings, with 11 Ks. With 8 innings, 11 Ks, he passes Dan's little litmus test that he has on pitchers, so he passes that. I also love Joe Ryan of Minnesota. I think he'll have a great second half. I think you could get him kind of cheap maybe, but I like Joe Ryan a lot in the second half. I think he'll pour it on. And I mentioned it earlier, Eli Morgan of the Guardians. I really think he'll be the closer by the end of the month.
And this is just to needle Ross a little bit here. I think Alek Manoah could be huge in the second half. I think he could. Like, a lot of owners gave up on him, and he went down to the minors. Maybe he fixed it.
Of course they gave up on him. Why wouldn't Dan Ratner would drop that guy so quick and make your head spin?
I mean, interestingly, I think of this as the Jose Barrios rule.
There you go.
He's toxic. You must get rid of him.
He's my Adalberto Mondesi.
Exactly.
I mean, that's going to be a trigger for me for the next couple of seasons. Just so you know, see
DeAndre Swift.
It just makes him start to twitch.
Yep, twitch. If you say
Dan, who do you
the guy for the Eagles now, Swift, DeAndre Swift.
Yeah,
you say that to Dan, and he
got Mondesi
step
for
by
me,
step,
or Justin Upton. There's a few for me actually.
We all have.
You haven't named anyone.
In terms of pitchers.
Yeah.
Well,
and even pitchers. Casey and I have been talking like madmen. Dan, why don't you tell us who you like in pitching wise?
Well, I mean, I do actually think Shane Bieber is turning things around. I don't think he's going to be a dominant force, though, because he doesn't strike out a lot of guys.
His strikeouts are way down.
But I would want to take a chance on Corbin Burns. I think because he has the upside to win you the league. And, the owner, it's just like what we were just talking about. And I think this is true with Trey Turner also. Don't underestimate how much people hate the players on their team who have underachieved. They've been torturing them all year. You come in and pounce on it. In our league, I dealt away Ozzie Albies because I got sick of it.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that I did. But, this shows you it's always available. I love making Ross laugh about these things. But you got to look at players like that who have been kind of torturing other teams. And,
another great example, you just brought it up, who's torturing owners right now is Max Scherzer of the Mets. Oh, he even came out and said, I'll use my trade clause and I want out of here. I mean, basically he said that. And Max Scherzer, I'm telling you, he has gas. He still has gas in the tank.
Well, yeah.
And wherever he goes, he's going to be a big factor.
Maybe the Yankees will take he and Verlander both.
That would not surprise
might as
me
well. They don't have to. They can just send a valet to pick their stuff up.
They don't even have to. They just.
Let me ask you about this. Christian Javier has really disappointed.
Yeah.
Really bad.
Do you expect him to turn it around?
I still believe in him. Yeah, I've seen him pitch too many times really effectively. I think the injuries to that rotation put a lot of pressure on him, and I just don't think he handled the pressure well. Um, I He's one of those players who, to me, it takes one really good start for him to just completely figure it out and get that confidence back, because what we saw him do in the playoffs last year was insane. Like, it just was the way he could dominate any lineup he faced.
True or false question. True or false? I have these true and false questions throughout the show.
Oh my gosh.
True.
Marcus Stroman, will he be the biggest pitcher traded
False.
for the trade deadline?
False.
You guys both say false.
False.
Say,
but mostly because you're distinguishing will he be the biggest pitcher traded, and I think that he is overachieved compared to what
he's quite small. I think he's only like 5'8".
That's right.
Well, I'm saying for a pitcher who's having a pretty good year, and
I do think he will be traded, but I could see somebody like Josh Hader being traded if San Diego continues to underperform. I could see.
I agree.
I could see Scherzer being traded. I could see, some of these these underachieving teams who are going to trade.
I think Jack Flattery is going to be traded,
or Adam Wainwright. I mean,
Wainwright's horrible. He should retire immediately. He's horrible.
I mean, also, shouldn't we count David Bednar among big time pitchers that are going to be dealt? And he's almost certainly going to be dealt, I would think. To me, he's bigger than Stroman, and not just in fantasy, but even in baseball.
You think so? Okay, that's fine. I think Stroman's going to be the biggest person dealt pitcher.
And where do you expect him to go, Ross?
That's a great question. I'd say Baltimore.
So Seattle, Ross, you have labeled as one of your underachieving teams, right?
Yeah, I just thought they would be in first place, and they'll be.
What are they in third, or are they in fourth?
I'm not quite sure.
Are they anywhere within a sneeze of the playoff race at this point?
Yeah, I mean, they're not out of it, but
okay. Because what about Luis Castillo? If they're out of it, because you already have Logan Gilbert.
I got to look that up. I don't know how many games back they are.
These young starters, if you could deal.
As you know, I love Castillo. I mean, if Seattle's selling, I don't know what. I think they're kind of neutral. I think they get the right deal to do it. But
yeah, and so, I mean, I think we'll know more in a week and a half, right? Like, come the final week of July, that's when you have to do the major kind of gut check and see where teams are. Certainly, Stroman has been pitching great and could be one of the biggest ones to go.
If Stroman does go, though, he's going to go to one of those teams that looks for bargains, because that's what he is. He's just not. He's not
a flashy. I could see him going to a Tampa Bay, right? Like, where he seems like he would fit in there, but I still think Tampa Bay is the home for Shohei if Shohei gets traded.
Wow.
As a rental.
And why do you think that? I'm curious.
Well, because they have the prospects to do it on a rental basis. I mean, their farm system is loaded. They're not going to have to overpay for him. They know they're not going to give him the free agent money in the offseason. And let's be honest, their window is always questionable for when they could win the East and win a World Series. And you put Shohei Ohtani at the DH and that left-handed bat in the middle, and then you give him and Shane McClanahan the first two starts of a playoff series.
I think it's a very smart move for them, which, it's easy to say that to bring in Shohei Ohtani, but I think what I'm saying is I think it's a smart move, even if they have to give up a lot of prospects, because they're in a position to do it.
Right.
It's
They'll
the right
have to
time.
give up. Rasmussen is hurt, right? So maybe they give him back because they're not going to get anything out of him this year. You got Aranda, the second baseman, who's been awesome. You have Taj Bradley, another pitcher you can throw back at him.
I like him, yep.
So they have all this depth in the farm system. The Orioles could do it too if they thought they had a legitimate chance this year. I've been talking about, Colton Cowser and Jordan Westbrook, all these great prospects that they have, and they still have plenty in the minors. You put Shohei in Camden Yards, for crying out loud, for 3 months.
That's going to be insane.
That would be so much fun to watch.
I want to see that.
It would be fun.
I think Marcus Stroman, if he's going to go somewhere, he's going to go somewhere like Texas. They're bargain hunters. They're going to bring in a guy who bolsters things and gives them a chance at a run, but not really.
It's smart because Eovaldi, I think, is due for regression. His first half was insane, but I think I was looking at his numbers in the last month. His his velocity is down almost 2 full miles per hour. And this is a guy who does not have a track record for being healthy.
Did you guys watch the All-Star game with him? Did you watch?
No, I didn't watch it.
So he was pitching. I've never seen this before. He was pitching in the game, and he had an earpiece, and they were asking him questions during when he was pitching. I mean, it's fine when players are playing first base or playing outfield. That's fine. I get it. It's baseball's a very easy game to like talk between pitches. But if you're pitching the ball and you're talking to the national audience, and they were trying to ask him questions, and he's like in the middle of a pitch, and he finally like,
excuse me, I'm a little busy here.
Yeah, he's like trying to figure out like it's a new catcher, it's a new stadium for him. Everything's new, and he has no idea what the hell's going on. He's facing the best players in the world. And all of a sudden he's getting questions from all these reporters. It's like it was kind of fun to watch. I know you guys didn't see it, but
didn't get to see it.
It was kind of eye opening just because I just can't believe he would agree to have an earpiece in his ear during the inning.
He's a team player,
I guess.
Now let's shift gears for a sec because we're still talking about second half sleepers. I've never seen so many prospects, like hot prospects, brought up in a given year. And obviously we know that's partly because they've changed the rules and it kind of rewards teams for doing that earlier, or at least doesn't punish them so much. So we've seen a huge amount of prospects come up. Casey, you're our prospect guy.
You are. Yeah. You're the guru of prospects, Casey. The guru.
The guru. So my question is, who are the next guys that we need to be looking
at? You better say this in Sandy Red. You better say them. You better say it.
Better say who?
Edwin Encarnacion, Christian
Encarnacion Strand, certainly the first baseman for.
You better bring him up.
We've talked about him, but Joey Votto is banging as we know, and so if he keeps hitting, there's not a lot of room. There's so many position players in there that he's going to get a chance if they trade a couple of their position players or some of their depth.
Jonathan India
get an arm, so that's where you'll see him come up, and I would love to have him. In Detroit, you could see Colt Keith. He's a third baseman I think he's in Toledo, AAA right now. He's batting .335 with 16 home runs at the break. They don't have an answer at third base. They obviously, as you know, Torkelson was a third baseman, I believe, in college, Ross, but he's a first baseman now for them.
Yep.
The A's have recently have announced they're calling up two of their top prospects in Zach Geloff and Tyler Soderstrom. Soderstrom is the catcher, first baseman, and second baseman Geloff or Geloff. I don't know how it's pronounced. They're both doing well, and they announced already that they're coming up. So those are a few names to watch. Obviously, Grayson Rodriguez, we've talked about a bunch. I think he's going to be up for Baltimore, and he's a stud of a starting pitcher. Ronnie Maurizio in New York for the Mets. We've talked about him a few times. He could get called up or dealt depending on who knows what the Mets are going to decide to do, because the truth is with the Mets, they could still be a playoff team if they put it together. If Scherzer and Verlander can be consistent, you're going to be able to catch the Marlins or the Phillies. I think those are the two teams above them. I don't think anybody's catching Atlanta. Obviously, Atlanta's the best team in the National League right now. So Mauricio is one. Grayson Rodriguez, Ronnie Mauricio. So there's some names of people who we've talked about before.
Let me ask you a funny question, though, Casey. You're a huge prospect guy, but once they get called up, do you follow them the same way, or do you lose interest? You're like,
Some of them I do. The more I talk about them on here, and the more I've tried to convince the audience or convince myself at times that they're worth a pickup, then I'll follow them. And certainly, as you guys know, in a lot of the keeper leagues we're in together, I tend to be the one who overbids to pick them up. So I have Colton Cowser and I have Andrew Abbott and I have, some of these guys. I've owned Ronnie Mauricio at times, but then I drop them when they don't get called up. So do I follow them as closely? Not as I do when they're in the top level of the prospects to get called up.
Right. But like if I asked you, like, which of these rookies has kind of already been starting to meet their potential, and like if you had to say the top two, who are the best rookies so far?
Can I answer it, please?
I'll let him say his man.
Go ahead, Horshack.
Mr. Carter. Well, Corbin Carroll, I mean, if you look at his stats, I mean, stolen bases, home runs, and we talked about him beginning of the year. Casey did a lot. And I did not think he would have the year he's having. I mean, Casey, his final stats, he could have 40 home runs as a rookie. I mean, that's incredible. And he could have 40 stolen bases. I mean, it's just incredible what he's doing in Arizona, and no one's talking about it except a few people. But Corbin Carroll, huge year. I mean, I would love to trade for him. I mean, I would probably offer Aaron Judge for him in our league between us three, just because.
And I don't even think you'd get it done.
I wouldn't.
Not in a keeper league.
I wouldn't. Okay, do you have to stick it to me? I get it. And of course, the face of baseball and the guy that should have been at the All-Star game, at least as a sub, because he's the face of Major League Baseball right now. It's just a shame that Major League Baseball did not bring him to the game, is Elid De La Cruz. I mean, this guy, he's just a fresh face, and it's just people are watching people are talking about baseball again because of him. I mean, he's changing the whole face of baseball. I mean, when he stole 3 bases in 1 inning, what did I do? I texted you idiots, and I told you how great this guy is. Remember? And you guys you were vacationing in Hamptons, and Casey was in France. I mean, you guys were having the time of your life, but I was watching baseball.
I was eating French fries. That's different.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
So how about
I agree that I think Elly De La Cruz has been the most exciting kind of prospect to be called up. I don't count Corbin Carroll in that discussion only because he's been up since the beginning of the year. I'm more referring to ones who've gotten called up during the year. I think Andrew Abbott has certainly been, to me, the one who has came up and consistently pitched where his kind of above expectations or at expectations. I don't know how long he can keep it up for.
I have to get him. I have to trade for him too. I have to figure that one out.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean, we say this on the show all the time, but you can trust rookie pitchers a lot more than you can trust rookie hitters, generally speaking. They just are able to put it together more quickly. And if you think about it, it makes logical sense.
Yeah.
The pitcher has the advantage. They always do.
I think recently Gunnar Henderson has started to figure it out in the past 30 days or so. So he's up there. I like the way Tanner Bybee has continued to pitch for Cleveland. I don't know how much longer he's going to keep it up because they're going to start managing innings soon. Those are some of the prospects. I think Colton Cowser hasn't figured it out yet, but he's doing okay. I think Jordan Westberg is hitting, but he's not hitting for power yet. So that's holding him back.
And
how about the guy they sent down in Florida, Perez?
Yuri Perez. Yeah, the problem is he's already met his innings limit.
Oh, that's stupid.
Not his innings limit, but how many innings he threw last year. He's already up to like 85 innings.
So what do you do with him? Let's say you have him in a keeper league.
I keep him on my bench. I mean, they're assuming he can throw another 30 to 35 innings. That's what they're guessing. So if he can get you 120 innings and he's got like a 10 strikeouts per 9 innings and a below 3.5.
I mean, in a redraft league, you just move on.
I think
unless you have an NA spot
in a redraft.
It's just a shame, guys. I hate.
But in a keeper league, obviously,
I agree.
Obviously, a dynasty league, you're gonna never get rid of this guy. But
I just hate the pitch counting.
Ross and I could go on a rant about
Matt McClain. When Matt McClain's been awesome, he's been understated since Elly De La Cruz came up because that's all anybody wants to talk about.
UCLA.
But he's still crushing the ball. I mean, he's still performing at a high level.
He's been great. I do want to say, with all this pitch count stuff, like Ross and I could talk about it forever, and I could talk about it so stringently that I will actually tear my rotator cuff and have to have surgery. It makes me very angry, especially as a mind-body expert, knowing that a lot of this is nonsense. They're ruining baseball. They're pulling people from no-hitters and perfect game bids, like for no reason. And they're ruining careers also. I could go on and on about this. So let's get me off this soapbox and get back to the show.
So what bold, Ross, I want to hear your bold fantasy predictions, you too, Dan, for the second half of the season.
Ooh, bold for teams or players?
Players, bold fantasy predictions.
I would, my true and false stuff kind of gave everything away, but Ohtani, yes, on 60 home runs. Ronald Acuna, yes, on 40 home runs and 70 stolen bases. Yes, on that. Elly De La Cruz, I would love to say Rookie of the Year, but it's me, Corbin Carroll.
How many homers for De La Cruz?
How many does he have right now?
No, I don't know that.
Who?
De La Cruz.
De La Cruz. That was a
How many
hilarious
home runs
segment.
does he have?
I was caught flat-footed not knowing the stats, and then you said, who?
Who are you talking about? Ellie De La Cruz only has 4 home runs so far this year, but 16 stolen bases.
Okay,
Yeah.
how about this? Adolis Garcia is going to break 140 RBIs for the season. I think
That's a great one.
Yeah.
It's going to be close.
I could see that.
Spencer Strider over 300 strikeouts.
Over
Wow.
300 strikeouts. What is he
That's
at
like
right now?
he has 160 now, doesn't he?
Yeah, I
So
know,
that's not-
but they always do this inning stuff and all.
They're
going to
ruin it with the innings count. Otherwise, I totally agree with you. I mean, he's clearly on pace for it.
Yeah, I mean,
All right, here's a question: will Nolan Ryan get over 300 strikeouts this season?
He did it like how many times? He never won a Cy Young.
He'll have a no-hitter next week.
Never won a Cy Young.
Nolan Ryan never won a Cy Young, which is
Uncle Ted has joined us.
Finally, we were waiting for you, Ted. We talked about everything you wanted to hear.
Well, not everything. There's plenty to talk about. But he did say the A team is in the house, and I appreciate that.
Zach Gallen over or under 25 wins. Zach Gallen will be under. And
I'm going to say
under
only because I think Arizona's going to fade, not because I don't think Zach
I
Gallen.
think they're fading big time. The Dodgers are going to win that division by 8 or 9 games, not because I'm a Dodger fan, just because I think Arizona's going to.
Everybody's talking about Ronald Acuna going for. Well, I shouldn't say everybody. Most people are talking about Ronald Acuna's numbers, and they are insane. And I tend to be more bullish that they're going to continue. And I think 40-70 is realistic. I think Julio Rodriguez is going to end up a 40-40 player this year.
Wow. What's his pace right now?
Let me look.
While you're looking, I'm going to respond to the Zach Allen question. I think the question really should be over under 20 wins. I mean, he's at 11, and we're more than halfway through the season. People need to remember that when you have the All-Star break, it doesn't mean halfway through.
It's not halfway.
It's slightly over halfway through. So if he's at 11 wins now, the chance of him, I put him at about 17 or 18 wins on the season.
So I was wrong. I said Kershaw would be in the DL in late July. I was wrong. They went earlier. He went on the DL in late June because his shoulder was sore. I don't know what that means, but I guess
that means they're saving his innings.
So, he'll be out a couple more weeks.
He just had a child, and he's bothered by
Julio Rodriguez right now only has 13 home runs.
Right. I thought it was 14, but yeah.
And you're predicting 40-40. And Casey, I mean, it's already July 13th. You think he's going to get
he's not going to have 40 home runs.
Okay. I think he's going
to. This is supposed to be bold predictions, though,
right?
Of course. Yeah, but that's like,
all right. So
you told me
27
home runs.
I watched this cat hit 41 home runs in the first round of the home run derby. So the power in there. How about this? He puts it together.
Alexis Diaz, Cincinnati Reds. He's at 26 saves right now.
50 saves.
I don't think he's going to get to 50, but I think he can get to 45. That's a huge number. Uncle Ted says, "Bye, J-Rod." His post All-Star run last year was bonkers, and we know he's capable of doing it. So Casey is right; he could get there. I just don't think he will.
And I think Shohei Ohtani is going to go 60-20.
All right, now let's just finish up on this note and we're going to talk much more about this next week. Trade deadline is something you have to start thinking about. If you're going to stash guys now, you want to stash them now. The backup closers. So who would you target? We've got our cover boy. Case, can you talk about him first? Let's start there.
Well, I mean, we picked Yerry De Los Santos. I mean, mostly because we think the most likely closer to be dealt at the deadline is Bednar.
Yeah.
On the season, he's only thrown 12 innings, right? So, but if you look at the whole Pittsburgh bullpen beyond Bednar, nobody's performed well. Nobody's performed consistently. Let me just.
Do you think the Pirates will trade Helen Keller or not?
Did you just say Helen Keller? You did.
Yeah.
Mitch Keller, you mean?
I call him Helen Keller, but you can call him Mitch Keller. It's fine.
You can call him by his name if you want.
I don't think they'll trade him.
All right. Here's a great tip from Uncle Ted about this. Devin Williams is gone.
Said that. Yeah.
Brewers will get a haul for him, and he's looking at Joel Payamps, I think is his name.
Joel Payamp is having a great year. I saw
he's
him.
Great. Ross owns him, I think.
He does.
But Devin Williams, they're tied with the Reds. They're not, or one game behind. They're not going to trade their.
Okay, but keep an eye on it because, like in this next week or two, if they start fading a lot, and the Reds start pulling away, they could do it.
But if they can get a bat, like if you think Payamps is just as good or can do as well as Devin Williams, and you can take Devin Williams to get a bat because that offense is anemic,
right? See,
it
that's
might even make sense for the Brewers to do it. Like,
so this is weird, but I actually agree with you both. I agree with Ross that I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. But I could see it happening for the reason Casey's talking about. And you need to remember, it's not only teams like the Pirates who are just trading their closer for prospects. Sometimes they're trading their closer for something else. And Uncle Ted points out they traded Hader under similar circumstances. So it certainly is possible.
So I think, so here's, obviously Yerry De Los Santos or Dory Marotta. Dory, I forget what his last name is the other bullpen arm for them that's doing pretty well. In Minnesota, you have both. I guess Duran has been pitching really well for them as a closer, but he only has 12 saves. They're not using him only in closing situations. So that could be somebody who gets dealt. Who else is out of it that would trade their closer? Would the Angels trade Estevez, Ross, if they fall out of it?
So the Angels are not selling. They already said they're buying. They're a wild card team. I don't see them getting rid of Estevez.
Paul Sewald in Seattle, if Seattle doesn't hold on, could be somebody. I think Adbert Alzolay is somebody big that could be traded.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Sewald is a good. From a fantasy perspective, it's good to be looking at somebody like him, because if they fade over the next 2 weeks, they don't have much wiggle room anymore. They really don't. I mean, they've got teams above them. The wild card is stacked. I could completely see them dealing Sewald. I would pick up their backup immediately. The question is, who is it at this point?
In Seattle?
Yeah. Well, you know what? We'll wrap up once Casey figures that out. So
I can tell you who it is. It's the guy who closed last year. Casey, give me what's the guy's
Their
name?
Backup right now is probably either Andres Munoz.
It's
Munoz. That's it. Munoz is their backup.
Yeah, yep. Munoz. So I would pick up Munoz right now. And again, I want to be ahead of the curve. We're about 2 weeks before it. Now is the time to pick up these guys, especially if you've got back-end roster spots and you don't know what to do with them, and especially if you need a closer. Go pick up those guys, and don't be afraid to pick up 2 of them, because you might only hit on one of them, but you can always cut that other guy and move on. Guys, it has been a great show being here with you again. Great to be back. We are going to continue for the next 2 Thursdays at least. We're going to stick on baseball. Football's around the corner. So we are going to be starting to think about that. In fact, Ross has already done that. If you've been paying attention, he's been releasing shorts. That sounds like
he's been releasing his shorts.
It sounds.
Yep. I did a short that's posted about the top 5 quarterbacks you should draft if you want to win your league. And I just did the top 5 sleeper running backs that you should actually pick up, because these guys are going to have huge years. You can get them in the 5th or 6th or 7th round.
Uncle Ted says, great show, guys. Remember, grab Travis Jankowski. By the way, I do want to announce this. We're planning to do a Dynasty Baseball League. If you're interested in joining us, you got to be an active manager. You got to be into it. You also have to be a decent guy. So those are the requirements. But if you want,
I mean, we already have one, Ross. We don't need another one.
Come to the show and let us know. We're really interested in Uncle Ted. It could be you. We'd love to have you in that league. So, guys, it's been a pleasure being with you. We'll be here again, same time next week. That's Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. Oh, Uncle Ted says, sign me up. Okay, come next week and we'll talk about details, okay?
Yeah, we'll get your information.
And Casey, pleasure being here with you. Ross, thanks for a great show.